One of my honestly least favorite memes is making fun of gaming branded products as not actually making you better at a game. Gaming grips on your thumbsticks, gaming chairs, gaming glasses, gaming drinks if you somehow equate a higher risk of cancer as being better at games. And thankfully, as a result, a lot of companies have stopped actually using that sort of branding, that they would make you better at a game. However, one product specifically that benefits gaming most that I feel undersells this value is right here. 144Hz or other high refresh displays. Now this is going to sound weird because I'm kind of late to the party in terms of talking about this stuff, and a lot of people are high refresh rate or die, but I am actually surprised to have learned that high refresh rate gaming can truly make you better at the games you're playing, especially if there's something very, twitchy, response oriented like shooters. And given my history with high refresh rate CRTs, I thought this would be interesting to talk about. Of my modern gaming, that being, from 2007 onward, I have spent my time gaming on 60Hz displays. Those are what have been most commonly available. That's what my TVs are. I mean, there's the 120Hz, but they're not actually an actual 120Hz refresh rate. And I quickly made the jump upward towards 4K, which is what I use for my main production machines, because I haven't had the ability to use separate gaming and editing setups until my new apartment here, where I have a crazy awesome Megadesk 3.0, tour coming soon, where I get to have separate setups. So for the past few weeks, I've been gaming pretty heavily on this monitor right here. This is the BenQ Zowie 27, I'm gonna mess it up now. It is the XL2730, which is a 27-inch, 1440p, 144Hz, 1 millisecond G-to-G response time monitor. Now, for its price of about $500, it's honestly alright. It's not the greatest monitor in the world. It's not IPS. It has a kind of meh panel. There's no speakers on it, so if you want just a quick, dirty, easy sound output on it, it doesn't have it. The headphone out, when I run it to my mixer, is very weak and just kind of lacking compared to other monitors that I've used, but it has a swivel, tilt, rotate, height adjustable stand. It gets nice and bright and sharp and can go up to 144Hz for 1440p, which is pretty cool. I've played quite a lot of shooters there over the past few weeks. Battlefields, Call of Duties, Overwatch, PUBG, Iron Sight. I've played a lot of different games on it. And I started to notice a trend where I'm actually landing more shots. Now, before I touch on that, if you're unaware of what high refresh rate gaming is or what 144Hz possibly means, I mentioned before, most standard monitors are 60Hz, which means that they update 60 times per second. And that's why there's an issue if you're running games below 60 frames per second. There's not a sync between what your monitor is spitting out and what your game's sending it, and so on. And so high refresh takes that to another level and sends more updates to the screen and therefore to your eyes than 60. Before, if you only had a 60Hz display and you were running a game at higher frames per second, other than managing input lag and removing stutter and just generally improving the smoothness of the game, what your eyes receive is still capped at 60 frames per second. You cannot possibly see higher than 60 frames per second on a 60Hz display because it can only possibly send you that many frames per second. Whereas this sends you 100 up to 144Hz, which is 100 up to 144 frames every second, which means your eyes have more information to work with. Now, not everybody can see a huge leap, or not everybody even at a glance would notice a difference, although if you actually played around with it, you'd start to notice a difference. And not everybody can see specifically 144 frames in a second. Some people can't see a difference between 120 and 144, and frankly, 144 is a little strange because typically displays operate, at least in the USA, in increments of 30. So you have 30 Hertz, 30 frames per second, 60 Hertz, 60 frames per second, 120 Hertz to 40 Hertz, not 144. But it allows you to see more information in a second. Your game will look smoother and your controls will be more accurate because there's less input latency and where you move is tracking more in real time. Now, this has actually led to me being more accurate in games, even games that I haven't touched before. It's currently showing some Overwatch McCree footage here. I don't necessarily have the best clips to show, as I am super rusty. I have not touched Overwatch for months prior to this past few weeks, and I am landing quick, snap, drag headshots, which is my preferred style to play, is just to look over and bam, get a shot. I'm landing those so much easier on this monitor than I ever would. And part of that is because when I was playing on my normal 4K 60 hertz monitor, I was just feeling like I had bad aim. I wasn't hitting it. I mean, I have decent aim. I've been gaming on PC, mouse and keyboard for most of my life. Console too, but you know, I've been using mouse and keyboard for a while. The controls are native to me, but there's just certain shots that I would try to hit that I would just be unable to hit. And that now I'm just, even on games that I'm rusty, I'm just like, oh, I want to hit the guy. Bam, headshot. Bam, headshot. I still miss plenty. I'm not amazing. I'm good at games, but it's not like I'm god tier or a professional at this point in my life. I used to compete a little bit, but this has made me feel so much better at games, and it can for you too. Now it's worth assessing here. This is specifically from the perspective, that'll be funny in a minute, from first-person shooters, wherein you're in a first-person perspective and you can control it. That is where you will see the most benefit in terms of gameplay, is in shooters and other twitchy games like that, where you have to react fast, you have to have specific accuracy, and so most shooters I have improved. Third-person shooters will benefit as well, and otherwise it's more of just a smoothness and comfort thing. There's a lot of RPGs and top-down games and slower-paced games that would benefit a lot better in terms of your enjoyment visually from just having a higher resolution and more detailed graphics at a 4K 60 screen versus lower resolution, high refresh rate screen. But in terms of fast-paced first-person games, 144 Hz takes the cake, which should be obvious. Like, no one's ever argued that it's a worse experience, but the fact that I can sit here and honestly make the bold claim that it will make you better at the games, the first-person especially games that you're trying to play, is pretty incredible. Now, of course, you have to have some element of skill here, and that's the most flawed critique that people always apply to the "it'll make you better at games" claim, is if you suck at games, you're still gonna suck at games. Oh, I don't feel any better. Yeah, you still have to have some level of skill, but it's one of those things like trying to tackle input latency in wired controllers versus wireless. If you have a laggy wireless controller, sound positioning, those little extra things where if you're already at a certain threshold of skill, or perhaps you've just always felt like input latency is pretty bad on the 60 Hz monitors you've used, that little extra bit to get you the extra 2% higher can make a huge difference. And I've sat here and said forever, I've tried high refresh rate for a long time. I never thought it would be worth dropping resolution, but to have a separate dedicated gaming setup, I would say that I'm probably never going back. Now, this has been particularly interesting for me because I'm used to using CRT monitors, the old tube monitors that everyone asks why I keep around. That one is 69 pounds. It is a 21-inch CRT monitor. It is huge and massive, and most people don't want to deal with that. But I use it for my retro games. It's hooked up to my Windows XP machine. And the beauty of these monitors is that monitor was made in 1998, if I recall correctly. I haven't looked at the sticker on the back in a while. 1998 or 1999. It can go almost up to roughly 1500p. It's like 25 something by like 15 or 18 something. It's like just between 1440p and 4K in terms of a 4:3 aspect ratio resolution at 85 Hz, which is still higher than 60. You know, it's not as significant as 144, but as its maximum resolution, which honestly, it's not the sharpest at that resolution. It's sharper, much lower resolution. But at its maximum resolution, it can drive in between 1440p and 4K at 85 Hz from the 90s. If you go lower than that, you can go to an ultra-wide 1080p at 120 Hz. If you go low enough, you should, in theory, I'm still working on tweaking the settings, but I could theoretically drive a low-resolution 200 Hz signal out of this monitor from the 90s. And this threw me off for the longest time and actually made me switch from PC gaming back to console gaming growing up, because my family, you know, I'm not from the richest family in the world or whatever. We held on to our CRTs and our DLP TVs until my freshman or sophomore year of high school. So I was playing Halo 3 on a big 65-inch DLP box rear projection TV. And I had a CRT TV in my room. My monitor was a Hot Wheels CRT monitor that I had stupidly painted a checkerboard on the front. that is what I used for the longest time. And I had that thing cranked at like 100 hertz at one point for some resolutions, 85 hertz. I didn't really know what I was doing or what the advantage was of it, but I saw bigger number equals better. And one of my first experiences really recognizing what refresh rates were was I was playing Halo Combat Evolved on the PC. That the custom edition multiplayer is still amazing to this day, despite the network code issues. But I played the crap out of that. And one day I was finally just tinkering around with the settings. I felt like something felt weird, and I wasn't even trying to tackle like a visual settings issue, but I was tinkering with the settings, and I changed it from the 60 FPS cap to VSync, or maybe it was 30 FPS cap to VSync, which locked it to the like 70 or 85 hertz that I had it at the time at whatever. It was probably 800 by 600. And it was so smooth. And I remember calling my dad into the room and asking him to just, you know, he had no clue what the hell I was talking about. I was just like, look, it looks so much smoother now. And he's just like, okay, whatever you say. But that was a game changer for me. And I never really dug into why until I was older. But then when we moved to the really crappy first gen LCDs that started coming out with our Windows Vista and later computers, which were 5x4, 1024 by 768. Then we started to get the 1366 by 768 weird resolution ones that were slow input latency in the first place, whereas CRTs had zero input lag ever, and 60 hertz. I started to really struggle with mouse and keyboard games. I started to feel like things just really didn't feel good. I got really frustrated. There were some shooters I was playing at the time, Combat Arms, Halo 1. There were a few that I just got really frustrated, Call of Duty 4 even, and I got really frustrated that I just thought I sucked at mouse and keyboard, and frankly I was using a pretty crappy mouse at the time. It was whatever generic Microsoft or Logitech one. But I got frustrated enough that I just up and switched. I just started buying all my shooters on the PS2 and it would have been PS3 and Xbox 360, and just went heavy into hardcore gaming for the rest, or hardcore console gaming for the rest of my high school career, because I was so frustrated with the 60 hertz. So coming back to this now, I mean, I've still played quite a bit on CRTs, having known what high refresh is, and I enjoy the crap out of like Warframe on there and Iron Sight games that'll run on Windows XP. I got some adapters where I could sort of make it work on modern computers, but modern graphics cards no longer come with analog pins required for true VGA signals to get the high refresh rate out. It's complicated. Mainly I've just gamed over here on this production monitor, which is already not a low input latency in the first place. So coming over to this, I have been hitting so many shots that I would not have hit before, that I did not feel I could hit before, that I just figured I wasn't good at, even on games that I was rusty at, and it has felt amazing. So yes, this has been a long video, and I have baited all of the negative comments and all of the people to tell me that I'm wrong, and sorry, but I'm probably not reading most of them, because I've started to learn that in videos like these, it's healthier just to let them go sometimes. But I will make the bold claim here that 144 hertz monitors will make you a better gamer if you're already decent at gaming in terms of shooters and first-person, direct-person tied games. I believe it. I've experienced it. I have gotten some of my kickback. I've enjoyed gaming on PC a lot more with this, especially since I primarily play shooters. It's been amazing to run games at 200, 300 frames per second and see all 144 get displayed here, see the effect. It has been fantastic, and I think you should check it out. And this is not a sponsored video or anything. Like I said, this monitor isn't great. The reason I got this was specifically for a sponsored project I posted a few months back, which you can check out somewhere in the card icon, is because it has HDMI 2.0, which allows it to run directly into the Elgato HD or 4K 60 Pro capture card, so I can do some capture and things like that. But otherwise, for the price, it's not the best monitor. I will have affiliate links on Amazon as always in the description below, but I'll also have some other ones that I recommend, because I'm not trying to sell you on a specific monitor, just a concept to consider. Now, if you're like me and are in a position where I was, where you can only have a specific setup, while 144 hertz is amazing looking for general desktop use, seeing the mouse flip around and moving windows feels so much better. Generally, for production, you still want higher resolution, which is why I've now separated setup. So I understand if you can't switch, don't necessarily. But if you're building a dedicated gaming setup, it's worth, especially since, you know, it's harder to run 4K games and things like that in the first place. I believe if you're building a gaming setup with budget restrictions of any sort, you will be happier with a lower resolution monitor. So a 1080p or 1440p 144 hertz monitor will make you so much happier, I think. So this has been me, Adam or EposVox, here to make tech easier and more fun. And hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more awesome tech content. Come check out my gaming channel, which I'm working on relaunching. Get kind of delayed by the move that I got forced into recently, which screwed up a lot of my production schedules. But go check that out, and I will see you in the next one.